Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today it is time for another speculation video. Yay! But what do we speculate on today here? Well, a new Age of Empires 2 DE expansion, of course. As some of you might have noticed, a whopping 21 new achievements have been added to the game recently, but as of now their names and requirements are still hidden. Mysterious. Additionally, on Steam a new DLC for the game has been listed under the name Porto, probably named after the city of Porto in Portugal, following the trend of expansions being named after European cities. But if we do indeed get another expansions, what might the new playable factions be? Well, if you just go after how often they get mentioned on Twitter or Reddit, the Swiss, Armenians and maybe the Georgians could as well be it, case closed. While Tibetans also get thrown around fairly regularly, with the intent to keep the Chinese market open for the game, the inclusion would probably be a less than wise move in that regard. But sometimes, especially in the historical context, looking back into the past may be worthwhile as well. So, I read through an early design draft of Age of Empires 2: The Age of Kings by game designer Bruce Shelley from 1997, and a look at that, it contains mentions of Swiss pikemen as well. Many of the other ideas in that draft since have gotten realized more and more over the last DLCs, as they also discuss Hussite wagons and Polish winged hussars, Tamerlane, and Jan Hus. The only heroes uncovered from that list so far are the Black Prince, which sorta kinda got covered thematically at least with the Jeanne d'Arc campaign in the 100 Years' War, and Alexander Nevsky, which coincidentally both already are included in the game's scenario editor. If ever a much discussed split of the more general umbrella civs like Indians and Slavs would take place, at least for the Kievan Rus we would already have a fitting hero for a campaign this way. Other potential clues, but admittedly more obscure ones in that document would be the Moors and their rule of Hispania, as well as nomadic sea pirate raids. But since both Berbers and Sicilians are already implemented, I would not see them as viable candidates right now. But circling back to the codename of the expansion, Porto. It is a city within the country of Portugal, a faction that already has been implemented into the game, so what else could it stand for? Possibly nothing. As the latest Age of Empires 3 DLC, Bucharest introduced the Mexican faction, which really does not have anything to do with the name Bucharest. However, so far, all of the Age of Empires 2 ones did include some connection to the actual content of the DLC, like Dawn of the Dukes with the DLC name Prague, or Lords of the West with Palermo. But as we already have the Portuguese in Age of Empires 2, what else could the name Porto allude to? An educated guess would here be another Africa-based expansion, as the African Kingdoms DLC also introduced the Portuguese. The expansion named after Portugal could include new African civs that would be some sort of fun symmetry at least. But when we look at Africa, do we even have more candidates that could fit into the time frame here? Well, yes, actually. Plenty. And interestingly enough, according to the original Age of Empires 2 game designer Sandy Peterson, for an Africa-based expansion, Mali, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Ghana would have been possible candidates. The first two of those already have been introduced in the African kingdoms, but the latter two would still be fitting options. With that in mind, I can safely say, as safe as you can be in a purely speculative video as this is, that Ghana and Zimbabwe would, from my point of view, be the two most likely candidates for an inclusion in the Porto expansion. But how could the two cities behave in-game? Which focus do they have and how does their background play into this? Let's start with Ghana. The Ghana Empire, at the time known as Ouagadougou, existed roughly between 300 and 1300 AD, and its rise and wealth stood in close connection to the salt, gold, ivory, and later slave trade routes in the Western Sahara area and the extensive use of camel caravans. The empire was very rich and used that wealth to expand, bringing more trade routes under its control and thus growing even richer. It has had a well-organized professional army, and additionally, every man in the empire had to undergo military training as well, so the amount of soldiers Ghana could field in times of war has been quite impressive, albeit most of the men were only lightly armored, if at all. At its high point, it has been written that 200,000 men, out of which 40,000 were archers, could be mobilized, but as so often, these kinds of numbers need to be seen with a certain amount of caution. So, a lot of gold, trade, massive amounts of light infantry, maybe tougher villages and camels. Definitely some solid cornerstones to design a cipher upon. As a wonder, I would have imagined the Larabanga Mosque, one of the oldest mosques in West Africa, if that hadn't already been the basis of the standard African monastery already. But how about Zimbabwe? The sources there are somewhat less clear in this regard, but one of the oldest records we have of the city of Great Zimbabwe was written down by a captain of a nearby Portuguese garrison. What a strange and unexpected coincidence, eh? The Portuguese did wage war with the people in that area, but the Kingdom of Zimbabwe always gone at that point, as it only existed roughly between 1220 to 1450 AD. The capital city itself had very impressive walls, up to 11 meters tall, which were constructed without the use of mortar, making them a considerable architectural achievement. Its inhabitants were the Shona people. Similar to Ghana, they grew rich with the trade of ivory, gold, and leopard skins, though to a smaller extent, and used those riches to fund a mighty military and wage war with their neighbors to demand taxes and tributes. I would have loved to find some more sources on this, to be honest, but from what I've gathered so far, Zimbabwe would be a defensive civ with some sort of trade and maybe hunting bonus, probably leaning towards a huge economy to field a strong late-game army. For the wonder, I would imagine something from the city of Great Zimbabwe itself, so either maybe its big towers or other parts of its impressive architecture. But before I dive too deep into those factions, which might possibly not even be included in the expansion in the end, I would like to stop here and ask you what your guesses would have been on which new civilizations might get introduced in the DLC codenamed Porto. At this point, as usual, I would like to thank you for watching this video and wish you a great day. This has been Alkhalim, and I'm out. Bye!